Awesome. So the session is being recorded. Otherwise, let's do the things to be done. Weekly market forecast, we're doing the things. We're going to prepare obviously for next week. All we're going to do is just go through a couple of pairs, share directional bias, and then obviously share point of interest, and then discuss why we have that directional bias and point of interest, just to make things clear. But otherwise, what I thought I'd do today is we've got two pairs that are not on the set list that are basically just saw setups on that kind of meet our criteria. So let's just discuss these two setups first, and then we'll go on to the set list of pairs, obviously AUDCAD through all the way to NASDAQ. So we'll start off with some CAD yen. Why are we on the weekly? We'll go down onto the daily. We'll start off on the daily. So basically all we're going to be doing on the daily is just finding or at least discussing a directional bias. And then obviously once we've got a directional bias, we go down to the 4-hour and we find our point of interest, which is where we plan to make our decisions. But nonetheless, basically, if you just look at CAD yen, higher time frame, what we have here is some sort of an ascending structure. And then we've got momentum breaking this ascending structure, also breaking a couple of levels of structure. So nice information over there. Nonetheless, what we're trying to do is we're trying to trade in the direction of this momentum, which has managed to break a couple of levels of structure. So all we've got, since we've got this momentum here, what we're looking at is we're looking at some sort of a corrective structure. So we've identified obviously a couple of equal highs there. And what we looked for, or what we were trying to look for, we can't trade inside of this POI here if ever there's a POI, but it is a nice momentum shift on a day. We can't trade inside of here because price is already inside of here. And I would argue on a smaller time frame, I think maybe we did tap something with this resistance over there. But nonetheless, we'll discuss it a little bit more when we go down to a 4-hour. Let's just discuss the directional bias. So with regards to our directional bias, we've got an ascending structure, we've got momentum, we've got a corrective structure. Obviously, we're expecting a follow through of this momentum to the downside. Now that solidifies our directional bias. We're nice and bearish on CAD yen. So I guess the reason why this pair is on our watch list, let me even discuss that while we're going down to a 4-hour, is because in terms of our JPY quote pairs, this pair has the clearest, cleanest setup for us to try and capitalize on a sell. All the other JPY code pairs are basically not so exciting right now. So at least we've got one JPY code pair with a very, very, very clear setup. So otherwise, let's get back to what we were speaking about. So nonetheless, on a 4-hour, what we've got here on CAD yen is we're looking for a POI, right? So all we're looking for in terms of POIs, we're obviously just identifying structures, and then we're looking for those momentum shifts on a 4-hour. So you guys can see that inside of this, there was some daily POI that we discussed that was a little bit lower over here, but you guys can see that on a 4-hour, there is no nice momentum shift that we can use inside of there. But on a daily, we did kind of tap inside of that area. Price is already inside of that area. So we can't look to trade there now already on Monday. So all I've done is I've gone on to a 4-hour and obviously just looked for a new momentum shift. What I find here is this nice big bearish engulfing over here where we've got a green candle, and then obviously we see that momentum pushing down, breaking some structure nice and impulsively. So what we're going to be doing is next week, all we're going to be looking for is we want to see price action coming up and terminating somewhere inside of this POI. Now, there is another thing obviously that we can discuss here, which is fairly obvious that price is at our resistance trend line now. It's some 3-touch structure. We've got our first touch here. We've got a second touch there, obviously, which we use to draw our resistance trend line. And where's price now? Price is at this resistance trend line there. We're seeing some signs of sellers. So there might be a selling opportunity that might come because we are at resistance. Context, where are we? We're at resistance. We should be looking to sell. Can't be looking to buy at resistance. As much as price is not where we expect the highest sell to come from, price is still at an area where we should be expecting some sort of sellers. So nonetheless, on CAD yen, because we are at some sort of a third touch, what we can do is look for some sort of a reduced risk entry. So that means going down onto smaller time frames, like our 1-hour, looking for chart patterns, ascending structures, whatever the case is, looking for obviously things that give us, whether it's reduced risk entries, break and a retest, doesn't really matter what it is. As long as it's a reduced risk entry, we are fine. So on CAD yen context, we're at that resistance now. We should be looking for sells, but obviously this is not where this is at least not where we expect our market to sell from. We do see, just based off technical analysis, that our highest sell with the best probabilities does come if price action obviously makes its way to this POI for some reason whenever price does get there, because we've got a lot of confluences that are in this area. Aside from there just being horizontal momentum shift, we've also got a resistance trend line where we should be expecting sellers. So there's some confluence at this area here. So on CAD yen, we are nice and bearish. Obviously, we're going to start looking for ourselves from here because we are at some sort of a resistance. But let's not be happy chappy. This is not where we're becoming millionaires. We're becoming millionaires from up here because there's better probabilities up there. So nonetheless, sell bias on CAD. This is the setup. Very nice, very clean setup. I'm very happy about this on a JPY quote pair because the others are just looking nasty. Otherwise, let's discuss gold and then we'll move on to our set list of pairs. So on gold, I'm also a little bit sell biased, guys. I'm also a little bit sell biased. Just taking into account context, what kind of decisions can I make? Where are the probabilities? Where's the RR? So just looking at things on gold, if we went up to a daily, what we just see, we will speak about it now because I don't think it's really necessary. But nonetheless, on a daily, there is resistance over here. Obviously, we can see there's resistance. And what we can see is price action obviously is coming towards, or at least came towards this resistance. And we're seeing some sort of a rejection, or at least a movement away from that resistance, which is we at resistance, we should be expecting sellers at resistance. So nonetheless, looking at the overall structure, we've got some sort of an ascending structure, whatever the case is. This is fairly impulsive because we did break resistance and treat resistance as support. We broke resistance, and then maybe one can say we started correcting, whatever the case is. But yeah, it's not so much of corrective price action. Kind of does look like a fairly nice trend, but maybe we can also take into account maybe the steepness of this trend. To what degree is our trend line steep? If our trend line was obviously a lot steeper, then we would identify this as a more aggressive uptrend. The more shallower our trend line is, the less aggressive the uptrend is. So I guess maybe this looks like 45 degrees. So it's kind of iffy. It's kind of there. It's a solid trend, but maybe not the strongest of trends or whatever the case is. But nonetheless, let's just go into what we see happening here. We've got resistance, we've got support, right? We can see first touch, second touch. That allows us to obviously draw a resistance trend line. Once we've got that resistance trend line, we see price action coming up for a third touch. What happens at our third touch? We see price action decelerating, or at least there's some sort of a ascending structure, whatever the case is, that ascended in a corrective manner. So we see that, yes, a lot of buyers coming into the market. Then we see every resistance that was formed here, price broke above, broke back below, corrective price action. New resistance over there, price broke above, broke back below, corrective price action. So a lot of buyers, all those buyers started decelerating within the market. They started slowing down the momentum. After we see those buyers obviously coming out of the market ever so slowly, we see now breaks in structure. We see the most recent support that was managed to obviously break a resistance area over there. We see sellers obviously now being able to push price action below that support. So somewhere in the world, there is someone that is willing to sell gold that is more than the amount of buyers that managed to get into the market from there, that also managed to break resistance. So cool. I'm happy that someone somewhere is willing to sell gold. Now, coming into our POI, things are going to be a little bit simple here when it comes to our POI. I think there's kids playing outside. Let me just move a little bit away from where the noise is, just in case. Promise you guys, this 1 second of moving might save us, I don't know, countless missed information. Nonetheless, so gold. Cool. So all we're doing is simple enough. We're just looking for a momentum shift that aligns with some level of structure where we can make decisions. Nonetheless, we do see price action. Obviously, we just spoke about price action now, most recently breaking the support. So obviously giving us a new lower low. Now that we've got a new lower low at a resistance, after we've seen price decelerate as we came towards this resistance, we've got some characteristics of a downtrend. Even if we just look at the 4 hour most recently, yes, we did break the structure, but just the most recent trend, this is downtrend, lower lows, lower highs, or whatever the case is. Nice, good characteristics of a downtrend. But what's the most important thing is our structure. We've got a previous support, or maybe you guys can even see it was treated as resistance, or whatever the case is, support that price action broke nicely with momentum. We've got a momentum shift. So obviously we've got signs that someone decided to sell and sell aggressively from this area. So things become a little bit simple for us on gold. All we're doing is we're waiting for price action to obviously correct and come into our POI. Once price action is here, all we're doing is waiting for reversal structures, double tops, head and shoulders, ascending structures, anything that gives us an opportunity to sell gold, obviously in accordance with our overall high time frame directional bias, which is sell bias because of this whole ascending structure. So gold, things are very, I won't say simple, but straightforward enough that we can all see what's going on and we can all make sense of the information. Nonetheless, we're done with these 2 additions onto the watch list for the week. Let's go on to our set list of pairs. Let me just see if anything is there in the chat, if you guys maybe asked any questions while we were discussing. Cool, no questions there. Let's continue. So we'll start off with AUDCAD. Now, if you guys remember, or if you guys are on the Instagram live, I just did say that, yes, a lot happened last week, but very little also happened at the same time because we got a lot of movement, but the movement was basically almost nowhere. If we look at those weekly timeframes, like the weekly opens and closes are not very far from each other, maybe with a couple of exceptions. So a lot of volatility, but no movement in any real direction. We're still in the exact same places on most of our pairs that we were last week. So we're not going to spend a lot of time in going into pairs that we've discussed last week that are basically just giving us the exact same setup because they didn't move. So all I've done is I've obviously just adjusted for the most recent price action here on AUDCAD. But just to recap the higher time frame analysis, we've got obviously this upside momentum here, managing to break a couple of levels of structure, and we want to trade in the direction of this. We're expecting some sort of a corrective structure to form, and then after the corrective structure, we want to see new momentum breaking the corrective structure, and then obviously playing out this overall higher time frame setup. It's Sunday, guys. The kids are out to play. I do apologize if you guys can hear that noise, but I'm hoping that Zoom does do some form of noise reduction from outside sounds. But anyway, to come to the overall setup, so we're still bullish on this pair, or at least we're primarily bullish on AUDCAD. To come to the overall setup and just to, I guess, explain what was the update and what's the difference from last week versus this week's setup. Just want to move my charts a little bit this way. So the only update is that instead of me including all of this as, remember, if you guys remember, we had this as one overall structure and we thought, okay, cool, price action maybe broke this structure over here and we were looking for some sort of a corrective structure to terminate at a POI inside of here. And then obviously we were going to be bullish from there. But that setup went straight into the bin. Obviously last week was just another kind of a week. And I guess it's going to continue to be like this, but we'll get to that conversation when we get onto our US30 and our NASDAQ. But nonetheless, on AUDCAD, the most important information that we have here, cool. If I look at the 4 hour, right, this is how I'm taking my information, and this is why I'm evolving my structure with reason. With reason, and I want to explain to you guys the reason, and maybe it's also going to be a young educational moment for you guys to see how important it is to always adjust your structure and accommodate for new things every week. There's always new information. There's always something else that you can do that changes the probabilities of the setup that you're looking at, because we can all have an expectation that market, maybe in this case, let's just say our expectation is that market might buy. But in terms of how the market is going to do this and what the market needs to do, because remember, if market needs to buy, there needs to be demand for something. Something needs to be in demand. And if right now, let's just say in this case, because we're trending down, that means that there's more supply in this market, right? So that means something needs to happen for the supply to decrease and for the demand to increase. So what it means that market needs to do something, whether market needs to make a structure, do some sort of formation, or whatever the case is, go down lower to test even more for more buyers, because obviously, yes, the lower price is going, that means that sellers are in control, it's a downtrend, but at the same time, price is going low. The lower it gets, the more attractive things seem for buyers. So as well as, yes, there's more sellers because price is going down, price is also going down seeking for buyers. It's getting cheaper, looking for a place where buyers are going to take demand, or at least where demand will start to increase. So nonetheless, back to our conversation here, is that we will never be able to anticipate or try and guess how the market will form or do or make whatever move. All we can do is plan contingencies based off the information that market gives us at any point in time. So hence us accommodating for our new structure. So nonetheless, let's speak about the structure and how I am changing, or not changing, but just accommodating with a little bit of reason. If I just look at the 4 hours, so this is why I chose to delete that overall structure that we had and just focus on this being my new corrective structure that I see forming here. So if I just look at the structure, right, 4 hour structure, what I see here is support being created, price breaks below, treated as resistance. I see a young structure there. After the structure, we've got the most recent support, price breaks below, we treat it as resistance after we've broken that. So this is like a proper young, solid, nice, good trend, right? Every new lower high, new lower low, lower high, lower low. We're not breaking back, we're not breaking a level of structure and breaking back above. It's nice, impulsive price action. Now, if we look at the difference, yes, it's still a downtrend, but we see a change. Ever since we created this low and we created this high, we then see a change in how price action is breaking our levels of structure. After we break this low, we break below, and price action breaks back above our level of structure. We start to correct around our level of structure. If I move my price action like this a little bit more, you guys can see we created a new level of structure, or at least a new set of lows equal lows. We just broke below and we broke back above. So price is now being corrective in a totally different way, I guess, than this price action. So that's why I decided that I'm not going to use this whole thing as a corrective structure, but I'm only going to look at where I see the corrective price action on a 4-hour. And the corrective price action in terms of this downtrend, at least I can say started happening from this stuff over here. Cool. So I hope you guys accept the fact that we changed our structure, and you guys see the reasons, and the reasons make a lot of sense. But nonetheless, just to get back to the overall setup that we're looking at, same setup, bullish bias setup. These POIs haven't changed. So obviously we've got our best probability setup. If price action obviously does make its way down to this POI, because there's a lot of confidence going on there, we've got our support trend line, we've got our POI, things become nice and rosy, simple, best risk to reward ratio all the way to the 90% of the structure. Things are very nice. But there's also a potential that market could reverse from this area here, considering, if you guys remember last week we agreed that we're in a range, this being the high of the range, this being the low of the range. And if we remember, we don't have to trade the way we were thinking last week, but we always remember what we analyzed the previous time, because here's the reason why I will always remember my previous analysis, because my previous analysis had reasons. I had a specific understanding of the information. That's what I want to take from my previous analysis. I don't care about my bias, because my bias was not a factual piece of information. I don't care about all of the things that I felt and thought or whatever. My analysis from last week was the facts. So I will always remember that part of the analysis, just so that I remember the reasonings, because the reasonings build your overall structure of what's going on here, or what could be going on here, because that's what we're trying to do. We're trying to stay ahead of the curve. It doesn't make sense for us to understand price action once it's happened, right? You want to see things and be able to predict what environment you are, to be able to take action, so that you're trading in the structure that's currently developing, if there's ever going to be momentum. Not that after the momentum, then we're able to identify, oh, this was a corrective structure and this was the impulsive move, because there it helps us with absolutely nothing. So otherwise, coming back to why I'm going to also be looking at the structure here. This is still the low of our range. We can also see that we broke this low. Yes, we did break the low and create a new low, but we broke back above. So price action can still, if it wants to, give us some sort of a smaller setup here, where maybe we retest this level of structure and then we continue to the upside, because this is still the low of whatever range we observed from last week. Price action can still respect the low of this range. So this is one setup. Maybe AUDCAD might be a little bit higher on the watch list, because it might be interesting to watch. If we get our setup here, then all and well be it. If we don't get our setup here, then cool. We'll get a much better buy with better probabilities, a little bit lower. So AUDCAD, we're nice and bullish. Obviously, all the nice reasonings over there. Let's go on to AJ. So I think AJ, we're not going to be making any decisions on AJ, but the analysis remains the same as last week. We've got downwards trending price action. We've got our POI over there. First touch over here, second touch over here. Things are fairly simple. Our probabilities lie for us at this POI, at that resistance, for sell side momentum. So I just wanted to discuss, but the setup is basically the same as last week. If maybe there was an addition to the setup, it was this week's price action. So this week's price action obviously just corrected to the upside. If you look at this on a 1 hour, maybe let's just do it. You can't really, or at least I won't really put any resistance in here, because I don't want to force myself into thinking, oh, and now I'm at a third touch, or whatever the case is, and then I take a sell and then price action still just destroys me, because there is no momentum shift that I can use here on my left-hand side that I can isolate the probabilities and say, yes, at this area, there's going to be confluence with this resistance trend line, and that's going to increase the probabilities of me trading at that resistance trend line. There's nothing that I can do in this case. So I don't think I'm going to risk a risk entry inside of here, or even this resistance trend line. I don't even think I'm going to add it there. I'd rather trade if maybe we saw a chart pattern. If yes, we can all see that there's some sort of resistance going on. There's an ascending channel that's going on here. If maybe we saw a corrective structure or some sort of a reversal structure, maybe this turned into a head and shoulders with a retest of this or whatever the case is for downside momentum, that can increase the probabilities because context, where are we? We're at resistance. What is there? There's an ascending structure. It's all the same. It doesn't matter what time frame we're looking at. We're using the exact same concepts to understand the information. The only difference is what time frame am I on? Is this information, the fact that I see an ascending structure, is this ascending structure giving me a directional bias? No, it's not, because I'm not on the daily. I only find directional biases on the daily. This ascending structure can give me points of interest if it's got resistance, but only if I find it on a 4 hour. Then it functions for that purpose. If I find it on a 1 hour, what's the function of this resistance, of this ascending structure, or of this what we're seeing here on a 1 hour? So obviously the time frames affect the type of information that we're receiving, but we're using the exact same concepts to understand and make sense of the information. So AJ, I'm still probably gonna hang 10 on this pair, not be excited to trade over here, but we'll just look at it and see what happens. But I'm still gonna exercise patience to sell up there. Remember, CAD giving us that nice JPY code pair. Everything is clean, everything is beautiful. Let's rather look at that in terms of our JPY code pairs. So AU, AU completely destroyed destroyed our setup last week. She gave us something though. She gave us something though. I think we ran away with 1.5%, but it is what it is. It is what it is. Anyway, on AU, so AU not much adjustment except that we're getting dangerously close to support. Close to support. So if we just look at let's just look at the most recent price action, basically a higher time frame, because we look at these pairs every single week. I feel like going on a daily and whatever, let's try and not do it all the time. But otherwise, if we just look at the most recent price action, we've got momentum, right, giving us a new higher high, completely reversing all of this sell side momentum. So someone's willing to buy, bringing us back inside the structure. Because we're inside the structure, higher time frame, we want to be bullish. Where can we be bullish? This is our best bet and best place of probabilities for some sort of a bullish setup. So we're still waiting for price to come down closer to this support or whatever the case is, or give us some sort of a chart pattern after we've broken these new lows over here. Because remember, ascending structure, we're still expecting price to at least fulfill the 90% rule of this corrective structure. So we can still see sellers still taking price down to the support or whatever the case is. So let's do the things to be done. Once price action breaks the support, then we're obviously looking at our reversal structures for upside momentum. In terms of the sells, remember last week we did say that we're also looking to sell AU. We'll do both. We'll buy AU, we'll sell AU. Obviously, just depending on the probabilities and how it presents, how price action presents itself to us. Nonetheless, in terms of our sell, the only place that we can still sell with good probabilities is up here. So if price action does not break this low yet, and we come back up without breaking that low, then we can still try and find a sell to come down and still achieve the 90% rule. But if we break this low first, then there's no way that we're still going to be waiting to come and sell up here, because what objectives does price have to come back down? There aren't any more objectives for price to come back down. So you guys see how we're building a story, building a picture, but we're all using the exact same concepts to do the same thing every single week. Analysis is, remember, always the facts. What our forecast is our plan to deal with. If price action does this, then that's how I'll respond, or that's the best way to respond in that situation. So New Zealand dollar CAD, this pair, it doesn't piss me off, but it's annoying to look at because she's just being so difficult, just being like unnecessarily difficult. But if you guys want to recap from last week, we've got upside momentum, we've got a corrective structure, we've got a level of structure here that price action broke below, broke back above. All we were waiting for, is this so much to ask, New Zealand dollar CAD? All we were waiting for was just for price action to reject off this trend line or off this support, because that's the level of structure that we broke below. And obviously we can come and retest at a later date in time. And last week, she played around there so many times and she just didn't get there. But anyway, I have no idea if this is the buy that we're looking for or if that is not the buy that we're looking for. let's do ourselves a favor and let's plan. Now let's use our structure here. You guys can see we've got equal highs here. We've got some sort of a double top, whatever the case is, cool. We've got equal highs. We've got price action breaking this low, which means that on a smaller time frame, this is the most recent break-in structure, right? So on a smaller time frame, on a time frame lower than the 4 hour, if maybe we can even say it's 4 hour structure. 4 hour, we broke the support, right? So characteristics of some sort of a downtrend. If price action does not break this resistance here, then we're not looking to trade inside of here. We're waiting for price action to come back down and to give us our low buy from there. Let's isolate the corrective structure, 3 touch, whatever the case is, will increase our probabilities, however, but we want a low buy. Here's the other deal. If price action does break this resistance area here, we've got new information, right? Because this looks like momentum, right? If we keep going and we break this resistance, we then have a nice POI over here, nice bullish momentum here that aligns with this resistance that we can use to then trade our buy as a correction into this level of structure over here, which is also some sort of a level that we broke below, broke back above, and at a later date in time, we can come back and retest. So we've got a couple of things aligning for us to trade at this level of structure, only if only we create a new higher high. If we don't create a new higher high, then let's look to buy plan number 1, plan A, and plan B. On New Zealand, I just don't understand why these pairs are being so difficult. I guess maybe they're giving other people with different edges an opportunity to make money. Everyone needs to eat, guys. Everyone needs to eat. Like the previous week, I think we got six trading opportunities. We took 6 positions. Last week, the market only gave us one trading opportunity. So you can see what a contrast from previous week trading 6 times to last week only finding 1 trading opportunity in this whole market. Yeah, that's just how it is. But otherwise, New Zealand dollar yen, I'm not going to waste our time, all of our time. We're moving sideways inside of this big range over here, and I'm not going to make any decisions inside of this price action until things become clear. We'll still adjust, and you guys can see we've got our structures, momentum, this being the high, we've got a corrective structure there. Yes, we're following, we're adjusting, but I'm not making any decisions until things become clear enough for me to make a decision in this big sideways moving market that's been moving sideways from April 2022. Let's go into some US30. So the interesting stuff. Oof. So US30, yes, we moved a lot, but we went absolutely nowhere on a higher time frame. If we had to analyze this last week and not know what the previous week's price action was, we would still be doing the exact same thing this week. So if we just look at the overall analysis, most recent price action, some sort of an ascending structure, momentum breaking, this is our last break of structure over there. So obviously we're trying to trade in direction of this if we can. On a smaller time frame, the only place to trade inside of this momentum is if this corrective structure does come up to somewhere here. Then we have a nice impulse correction and impulse to continue this downside momentum. Otherwise, if price action chooses that she's going to do something completely different and come a little bit lower, then from lower, we'll have an opportunity to try and buy US30 because on a higher time frame, this is some sort of a support that we had broken below, obviously broken back above, and at a later date in time, we can come back to retest for some sort of bullish momentum. So in terms of areas of probability, yes, we're looking to buy and we're looking to sell based off the structures that we see, but these are the best places, obviously, to make these 2 types of decisions. These are our high time frame levels of structure. What do we do now inside? Because inside there is confusion that is beyond the word confusion. And I don't blame anyone for this confusion. I think everyone right now, or at least every investor that is keeping these markets up right now, is either thoroughly confused or here's my second thing. You know what, guys? Sometimes we forget about the world of options. We forget about options trading, and options trading is like the casino of Wall Street. We forget about options trading. And what my best guess is that there's someone that put a lot, we can say a lot of call options on something that is in the NASDAQ or something that is in the US30, that they're just waiting for those call options to get to a specific date and expire, and they cash. And once they change those call options to puts, they're not going to be keeping up this market for much longer. There's no way that this could be real, that what we are seeing right now could be real. There's absolutely no way. Unless we're just being, I think we definitely are being taken for a ride. But otherwise, things are still the same as last week. We're still inside of, I guess, the sideways moving chop over here. And whenever we're in chop, the only way we trade chop is, number one, either extreme highs or extreme lows, or number two, we try and find chart patterns inside of the chop to help us make sense of the chop. So nonetheless, unless price action gives us some sort of an ascending structure inside of here, and price action maybe is at some sort of a resistance, we won't be able to find a sell. Unless maybe we at some sort of a support inside of this, we won't be able to find a buy. But to safely trade support and resistance inside of this chop, I don't really see it happening. I see structures, I see structures being a little bit more safe to wait for, or extreme highs or extreme lows. Let's go on to some NASDAQ and we'll call it a session. There's 5 minutes left of our session. So NASDAQ, yeah, Google. We thank Google for all of this nice upside momentum, but our whole bias, our whole setup that was looking so ambitious went straight into the bin. NASDAQ, exception to last week, and NASDAQ kind of did really move in one direction. NASDAQ sure picked a direction, and it's all because of the tech. It's all because of the tech. Cool. NASDAQ, if you guys remember what we were doing last week, we were trying to sell NASDAQ. We had two POIs. I think one was somewhere up high here, and there was another one inside of here that we were looking to sell from. Those are the only two places basically where we were trying to sell NASDAQ, but NASDAQ did not slow down. Yeah, she did not slow down. She came straight through. Obviously, you guys saw we only traded once last week. There was literally nothing in the market for us. The market wasn't not playing with our setups last week. She was just not giving us any entries, but it is what it is. Let market do what it needs to do. Coming back to the analysis now. Now we've got a break of structure. Now we've got a break of structure, proper break, proper close above. If I want to be bullish, all I'm doing is just going to look for that momentum shift that happened just before my break of structure, which is obviously there. And my job is simple. Once price action obviously retests this nice momentum shift, that's where I saw buyers coming to the market. There's a place where I can safely buy. Then we do the things to be done. Simple break and a retest trade. In terms of us looking to sell NASDAQ at this point in time, I have no idea where we're going to sell into all of this big buying momentum. So unless price action does something freaky, like breaking back into structure, and then we see the characteristics, the nature of what's going on change, maybe we see momentum breaking back into structure and we see corrective structures, maybe retesting resistance or price moving up. Maybe in that case, then we shift our bias and we become sell bias again. But for now, we can't be sell bias into all of these buyers. I think no matter how much we have a bias, at the end of the day, the price action is the truth. What we see in the market is price. I guess what do they call it? They call it the efficient market hypothesis, where they say that at any point in time, what the price is right now reflects all the available information that the market has. So price is always showing, or price is basically always efficient, because every piece of information that is available for someone to make a decision, they would have made that decision, and price would currently reflect those decisions. So cool, let's accept what we see. We accept the buyers, but if this buy don't come, I'm still going to be looking for a sell. Let's see what happens. Let's see what happens. Let's see what happens. But otherwise, guys, there is only 2 minutes left of the session. Let me check the chats. If there's nothing in the chats, we can call it a session. I don't see anything over here. If I see you guys giving us a thumbs up, then that means there are no questions. We'll call it a session. Thumbs up, thumbs up, thumbs up. Elton, Thanks, dude. Thanks, dude. Thanks, dude. Otherwise, guys, thanks for taking time on your Sunday for preparing, at least to prepare for us or with us next week. Why is the English running away? Oh, Jesus. But otherwise, guys, thanks. I will see you guys in the groups. Let there be peace there in the streets. Let our brothers and sisters be safe. Let me end the session. And then I'll see you guys. We'll speak where we speak, guys. Cheers.